Well, we got that muffler back on, and there was a bit of a part failure, and those muffler bolts had stripped out that had come from Farmer Tech, so I needed to put some OEM ones in there. I'll get both the bolt and the nut OEM to replace those with over time. And so that one there has a little red bar and piston. We're going to test that for a while. Muffler mod by me, and the OEM muffler mounting bolts and the OEM full wrap handle. That's what it's had so far. That's different than what came from the factory. And had I left the muffler on, those things wouldn't have stripped. So that was just the soft material that when you take off the nut a couple of times, put it back on, the basic material is not strong enough to do that. That throws a little bit of shade on the quality, I suppose, at least for those mounting bolts. I worry about the bar studs because on the 660s I had soft bar studs, but I'll get some OEM bar studs in there at some point if I feel like those are getting soft. Really don't have a lot here, but I do just want to run it for a couple of minutes to see how it runs with that muffler. See if I can tell any difference. Let's start the deal, and again, what's the most important thing? Can I get it started? If I can't get it started, it's a terrible saw.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons why the 28-inch bar makes sense when you have that kind of diameter of hard wood. But one of the points I was trying to make before was one of the big reasons for a kickback is with a long bar, sometimes you reach across and get that thing where you don't want to. Now, obviously the answer to the question is making sure you have tip control. Sometimes it's just hard to do with a long bar. Sometimes a shorter bar makes more sense. In this case, because I'm having fun with this saw the way it is, that's good configuration right there. And this thing's got plenty of power. Now that chain's not the best. I could take a few swipes on that. But for testing out the saw tonight, it was just fine. So, you know, depending on what I'm going to be doing, the saw configuration is going to change, right? You're going to see with the videos I'll be doing this fall, just like last fall, the amount of work where I'm actually bucking logs in the ground is pretty small. That's not really where the time is spent. Most of the time I'm sitting on the ground getting the tree and the cut for felling the tree as low as I possibly can. You know, so that'll be one situation. And then the long bar makes sense there because, you know, I want to be able to get all the way through the tree. I don't want to have to hit it from both sides. When I was younger and more spry, I would probably get away with a 24 or 20 inch on that situation because I was going to hit it from both sides. It didn't matter. It was almost it's just what you did, you know what I'm saying? As I'm getting older, I'll carry a little extra weight and it's easier for me if I can just go from one side and get all the way across the tree. And here's the thing, is with my buyer, he doesn't want over 30-inch logs. You know, the mill's not going to handle anything past a certain diameter. They don't want them. So those trees fall into yet another category. When I'm actually logging for money and I need to sell the logs to the mill that I've been using to this point in time, the logs they want are from 20 to 28 inches. They don't want the 36-inch logs. They want the 20 to 28. And when I'm logging, I'm out there for hours, you know, so weight matters. And I want the smallest and lightest configuration that I can get away with. And sometimes that's two saws, one saw for felling and one saw for breaking down the tops. And you've seen me over and over again, I'll be on the ground or close to the ground doing my felling cuts, and the longer bar makes sense because I want to do one plunge cut all the way through. I don't want to have to do it from two sides. I'm really not that good. It's harder for me to match up the cuts, you know, especially if I'm on a hillside. So having a bar where I can just go right through in one shot, that is worth the extra weight for me, and that makes the longer bar make more sense to me. You know what I'm saying? Now, when I'm breaking down the tops, cut the top out and breaking down the branches so I can tow them with a tractor, oftentimes I'm working at my waist to chest high. The big saw doesn't make sense for me there. And plus, since it'll be a little more dense, I don't want the bar reaching through and snagging a branch and kicking back. So I'll have a 20-inch bar and a light saw, 555, 562 with a 20 or 24-inch bar for breaking up those tops, because that's the lightest and smallest configuration that makes sense, right? There's no sense in me carrying a 28-inch bar and a big saw in that situation. I'm just going to get myself tangled up. So smaller package, lighter, makes a difference. And that's when I'm out there, I'm cutting hours. You know what I'm saying? When I'm doing tree work, like I cut this guy's tree down, the one I did upstate, you know, I do tree jobs. That might be like 3 hours. You know what I'm saying? It's not 8 hours, it's like 3. So having a bigger saw sometimes is fun. So you mix the fun with the work. And I'll use a saw like this because it's a bling factor, plus I just want to put time on it. I like this thing. I'm having fun with it. And the more I modify it and build it, the more I have ownership in it, and the more I want to run it. So yeah, those tree jobs, yeah, you know, I'll be out there cutting for an hour or two. This saw can get that call because even though it's big and heavy, I can handle it for that period of time. But like I did down there, if you look closely in the video, I cut this ash we're breaking up right now. I did the felling with this saw with a 28-inch bar because it made sense. The 565 would have been easier on me, but I just wanted to run it. It was a tree job. It wasn't going to be all day, so I went with the bling. I went with something I wanted to run. I wanted to get time on the saw. But I didn't put a lot of it in there. When it came time to break the top, I was working from waist to shoulder height. Most of those branches were up off the ground because the tree goes like this, and this is hardwood. It's not pine. They don't just crush to the ground. They'll hold the whole tree up. So you got to work up here. You got to work up around your head. And for that operation, I didn't take this. I didn't want a long bar. I wanted a light saw. I took my 2175 with a 24 because that was the smallest saw that I had in the truck. If I had a 555 with a 20, I would have used that saw. You know what I'm saying? I would have used a top handle if it was something was handy. I don't want a big bar up there. I don't want it up by my face. I don't want to have to carry that 25, 26 pound saw here all the time for a couple hours. When I'm doing the tree jobs like that, yeah, I probably could have got away with this saw, but I didn't know how much I was going to do, and I knew I had a couple 3 hours of time, so I did go to the smaller saw because I was trying to conserve a little bit of my energy, and that's why I picked that saw. So based on the situation, the saw configuration matters to me. It's not a one-size-fit-all scenario. That's why that 565 with a 24 or 28-inch bar is such a handy saw, because it does such a wide range of work for me. And I guess I don't know how to articulate that. There's a difference in how I pick my saws when I'm logging, and I'm going to be out there all day, you know, from dawn till dusk. In that mindset, I want the 565 with the 28 because I'll sacrifice a little speed because I want something light. I don't want to carry a big saw around all day. And for topping, I'm going to want a 24-inch bar or a 20-inch bar on a smaller saw because I'm working up here. I'm not working on the ground. That whole bending over crap doesn't apply. So that's one whole different scenario and a whole different metric for me to pick the saws I'm going to use. I'm trying to get through the day. I'm getting older. Weight matters. Vibration matters. I need something that's easy for me to control and is powerful enough to do the job, light enough that I can work with it all day, and with enough bar to get the work done, but not so much bar that I'm adding another 2 pounds to the configuration of the saw. So that's one configuration. That's one series. And then, like I was talking about, when I'm doing tree work or tree drops, changes a little bit because I'm not going to be putting in dawn till dusk. I'll be putting in 3 or 4 hours. That's when these bigger saws can come into play and make money for me. Partly because it's fun, but partly I'm not going to be hanging on to it tree after tree after tree. It'll just be a tree or two, you know what I'm saying? And maybe I'll buck it up on the ground, maybe not. But even then, I'll still have a smaller saw if I'm getting tired, like I did with down there with that Jonsered 2175. That's 6 pounds lighter than this saw. That matters, even with a 24-inch bar. A 562 would be 7 or 8 pounds lighter with a 24, like a VersaCut or something like that. That's a better configuration for doing the tops and stuff like that for me. So that's a second situation when I'm doing tree work. And then the third is when I'm having fun with friends. And then that's when this stuff comes out. You know what I'm saying? Because I like, the bling is part of the interaction, talking about what you built. You know, I really don't have respect for the guys who buy someone else's build, but I've got a lot of respect for the guys who take these kits and turn them into running saws. And if I do more get-togethers, I want that kind of a person to brag about what they did versus what they bought. You know what I'm saying? And in that situation, scenario A, logging, scenario B, tree work, doesn't apply. The only thing that applies is smiles. What gets the most smiles? So depending on the audience and the type of trees that I've brought up for the get-together, that dictates a saw. It might be the big Solo 603. It might be a Holzfforma if it's a bunch of guys who like building kits. It might be my L77 if it's guys who like vintage saws. You know, that's a completely different metric. So anyway, I really appreciate the knowledge that a lot of these guys bring to the table. I don't agree with some of it. It doesn't fit my world, but I appreciate that it works for their world. And I want to stress over and over again in my channel, I'm not trying to tell you what's right for you. I'm trying to tell you what's right for me. And there's a huge difference. I have no delusions of grandeur. I'm an old fart, you know what I'm saying? I don't consider myself an expert at anything. But I've tried a lot of the stuff that I've been hearing online over the years, and some works for me and some doesn't. And that scenario A, B, and C really dictates whether or not things like a big saw with a long bar works or a small top handle works. Like when I was up on a bucket this weekend, I don't want a big saw. I don't want a long bar. You know what I'm saying? I wanted something that was just enough to get the job done, because it was already awkward enough and the thing is bouncing around like this. I don't want a big saw just to add weight to the scenario. So like I said, it just depends. It just depends. I'm not arrogant enough to say what works for me is going to make it better for you. The only thing I can say is you can see what I do. It's real time. If you have a better system than I have no pride, tell me. And if I've tried it, I'll tell you that I've tried it. But it's not based on pride. I'm not into that. It's just simply empirical data. It's what works. It's how I feel at the end of a job or at the end of the day, which dictates whether or not something works or not. Now that I've let this sit, I wonder if it'll restart, because that tells me if I've got a solid build. This saw is really, really, really fun for me, okay? It's not practical. There's no way in heck I'd use this all day for logging, just simply because it's just too big and heavy. But it's fun, you know? It's just fun. And that's the only way I can say it. It would be fun with a 28, 36, 42 bar. It doesn't matter. The saw is fun. I do think that I'll probably wear out my solid Husqvarnas on this saw, and the bars, the Husqvarna bars. And I do think that my 565 and my work saws this year, I'm going to either get a steel light bar or the Husky painted Sujihara or a Sujihara, something of that class, to do my logging, because an extra pound matters. The Zamaro bars, whether it was a Total branded or a Zamaro, the tips didn't hold up, so I can't use them. They're nice bars other than that, but I couldn't use them because they failed in bore cuts. And the steel is an awesome bar, and the Sujihara as well, and Husky now has endorsed that by selling them. So I'll probably end up with one of those for the true work saws. And I respect the people who come up with a different system than mine. It works for them, you know what I'm saying? It's just as valid as anything that I come up with. And for that matter, it's more valid because it's what they came up with. It's what works in their world. Well, I'm the same. You know, I've got those three different scenarios, and I've built systems around those scenarios. It works for me. It really does. And I try a lot of stuff that I hear just because I'm curious. You know, I did do a stint with the really long bars years and years ago. And when I first heard that old reach down versus bend over, I realized that I don't do a lot of that. It doesn't matter. You know, it's not my world. And it's, again, prevalent online because there's a couple of people, they do a lot of firewood. So that's what they're, you know, that's what their focus is just doing the firewood. And even the former loggers, especially in the Pacific Northwest, big, strong, long bar saws is how they did their trade. But I've got a bunch of guys out here who've done their trade with a different configuration, equally legitimate. One is just as valid as the other, is my point. And I'm not going to get into that whole game of because I think this is the best thing for me, I'm going to build an argument to try to convince you that what I'm doing is the right thing for you. You'll never, ever, ever get that out of me on this channel, because I respect your opinion to make your own damn decisions. You don't have to listen to me to figure out how to do your work. That's for sure. Be grateful for the guys who actually put their heart into this and tell you how they do things, and try to tell you how to do things at times, because it's just how they present. Their heart's in the right place often. It's not a pride. It's just this is what they believe. It's like religion. And don't be upset with them. Don't turn the channel off because you don't happen to agree. Oftentimes the reason why the channel is fun is because of the personality and watching them do their job. It's like I watch Bjorn Butler out there. That's one of my favorite channels. There's about 3 channels that I watch on YouTube. Bjorn Butler's one. Yes, I watch Buck and Billy Ray. I love his spirit. Happy guy, positive energy, very opinionated about what he does, but it works for him. You know what I'm saying? It's totally legitimate. And I really like watching Tinman because he's growing. You know, he started out kind of green, and he's growing into the the whole saw thing, both from a mechanic perspective, but also as a guy doing firewood. And but again, positive energy. He's speaking from the heart and what he knows. He's doing his very best he can, and even if it doesn't fit your world, I guess my message is be grateful that those guys are willing to put out their heart and soul for us to see and enjoy, both from a reality show perspective, but also learning stuff. I learn a lot from these guys. Sometimes you learn what you do is better, and thank God you do what you do, and sometimes you learn a little different technique. But the point is, all the information you get is knowledge that can be used to better your craft. I mean, I watch Mountain Man too, and there's a lot of stuff that those guys do. It's like, I don't want any part of. But I'm very grateful for the fact they put their life out there, they put their heart out there for us to see. You know, you kind of pick through the information, and there's always nuggets of good information in that. With like Bucking, for example, his chain filing and his axe work, that's awesome stuff for me. I think it's really cool. I'll watch it. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it, but I sure appreciate it. And the fact that he's willing to put it out there, I appreciate that as well. Same with 10 minutes porting. But Bjorn Butler, that's real. That stuff is real. If nothing else, you watch that channel for the scenery. You know, I mean, I can't imagine a life like that where you fly in with a helicopter, you cut, and you basically have to have a system developed to where you're out there, pretty much what you carry in has to carry you through a period of time. And you don't have a dealer right down the road to knock on their door for help. You're on your own. I just find that channel amazing. I enjoy it. So all I can say is thank you. I'm grateful for those channels, all of them. You know what I'm saying?
Nut back on, cotter pin through, turns free, so it should be fine.